radical hospitality. You welcome me, I welcome you. Welcome. Being invited into the space, a feeling that you belong. Isn't that a key to our life together? Isn't that something we often talk about in the church, right? We're a welcoming church. By the way, I still haven't served a church that did not think of themselves as friendly and welcoming, and yet we know the reality of it. We know that at times, no matter how hard we try, some folks don't feel like they're welcomed. They don't feel like the place is friendly. We also have experienced in our own lives places where we have felt both welcome but also excluded, haven't we? So think with me for just a moment about those moments in your life, those places in your life where you have felt welcomed, where you have felt a sense of warmth and a sense of hospitality. Think about those moments for a while. I know for me, one of the places that comes to mind often is when I go somewhere and travel and go to a hotel. There've been those places, those hotels that are filled with hospitality. They lay the red carpet for you. They welcome you in such extravagant ways. You feel special. In fact, we call hotels and places like that the hospitality industry, don't we? And there is something quite interesting about folks in those industries that they do get a sense of treating you in a particular way, and you do feel extremely welcome there. There's just something about the little details of those moments in our lives. But I've also experienced that kind of welcome hospitality in restaurants. I've been blessed over the years to be pastor to folks who own restaurants, and I can tell you, it's some of those folks, one of the things that I would say describe those places was that they were deeply hospitable, that you enter that space to eat together. There was something deeply warm and home, a sense that you could indeed gather no matter who you were there. See, I love that too. And then there are other places. I have experienced places of worship that are deeply hospitable. I think First-Plymouth actually is one of those places that I think at its core has that warmth in it. I also experienced the other too. And then we want to talk about our own homes. Are they places of hospitality? So I got curious about that word, hospitality. The root is the word hospice. And that root word is fascinating because that root word has it's a coming together of guest-host. It's a coming together of the relationship between guest and host. That's what hospice means, guest-host. And so think about those dynamics of that guest and that host. Think about that mutuality of these two people coming together. And think about what it requires for that guest host, for that hospice, for that hospitality to work well. Now that guest host, hospitality, it's not always easy. You know that and I know. Think about when you host someone in your home, even if they're a family member. Think about what it requires. Maybe you clean the house, and maybe you have to figure out where they're going to sleep, and maybe for that moment of time when they're in your house, it puts a little bit of a stressor on how many bathrooms you have in your house or how much food you have in your refrigerator, right? So in other words, a guest-host relationship, a relationship of hospitality, has some tensions that are innate to that relationship. That's why it's hard. The other interesting thing about that guest host, that hospitality, is that in the ancient world, being hospitable, opening doors to the stranger, was a risky thing. You didn't know this person was coming into your home or coming into your business. You have no idea who they are. You don't know what their agenda is or what they bring with them. You don't know their story, their history. So being hospitable naturally means that we all take a bit of a risk in that relationship. And yet at the cornerstone of what it means to be Christian is to be a community of hospitality. In fact, the early Christian tradition constantly taught its followers to open their doors to the stranger. The book of Acts tells us that one of the key markers of the early Christian community was that they welcome the strangers in their midst constantly. In fact, early Christian traditions did other very hospitable things. They became hubs of people who were sick, and they cared for the sick. Jesus called us to go visit the imprisoned, for example, and to welcome the poor. All of that is a call to hospitality. And in the hospitality, there is an encounter. In the hospitality, there is an opportunity. In the hospitality, Jesus reminds us today, we meet God. So we should be out there in the world looking for opportunities to practice said hospitality. So then what does it mean to be radically hospitable? It doesn't just mean that we're just going to welcome people. No, that's important. But radical, its own root word, the word radical is that which has roots, right? That which is rooted, or getting back to the main thing, getting back to the roots of something. So radical hospitality means that we're being invited to get back to the roots of what it means to be a Christian community that provides that guest-host experience that is risky, but it's part of who we are as the church, and that we go on that journey together, in a journey of mutuality together. And so this is much more than friendliness. This is a sense of making sure that whoever comes into our midst, and let's just use that as one example. Hospitality works two ways. Folks come to us, but we also go to others, right? So when folks come and, let's say, worship with us, are we practicing the kind of rooted hospitality that provides for a humanizing moment for that person that comes our way? You know the anxieties of being new in a place. So do we lay the red carpet out for them? Do we make sure that there are pillows and towels and maybe a little mint, right? Do we make sure that they feel safe? Because remember, the guest is taking a risk on us too. It is risky to be a guest also, right? So the goodness of Jesus calls us to be a people who recognize that real vulnerable place that it is to be a guest, and to make sure that all that come by and encounter us are encountering Christ in us. Divine life, love becoming flesh in each one of their encounters. Now that also means that doesn't mean that it's a free-for-all either, and this is a whole other sermon for us today, but there are some boundaries to our life together. You know, there's mealtime, and we have to take turns, right, taking showers, because, you know, there's only so many bathrooms, and we have to make sure that everyone in the community has a task, because there's so many of us, right? So someone has to take out the trash, someone has to wash the dishes, someone has to make sure the doors are locked at night, right? So that's a whole nother sermon. We talk about kind of the practice of living life together. But those details should not keep us from the core call to be hospitable, to open our doors and our hearts to the guest that God sends our way, and knowing that in each one of those, Christ is. That's pretty radical. That's pretty at the root. And the other is that then we, as we get sent in the world, and after worship each week, we send you with blessing. We are hoping that you go into the world and you create communities of hospitality everywhere you go. You create hubs of this community we call First-Plymouth everywhere you go. The hubs that welcome that guest host encounter, hubs that open the doors for you to see that other as a human being whom God made, hubs that create spaces where people can find belonging and community, whoever they are, wherever they come from, whatever their story, hubs that begin to sow seeds of acceptance and seeds of understanding and seeds of conversation and seeds of humanizing and dignity affirmation, seeds of kinship, that when we're sent out, then we take this sense of hospitality with the risks and with the edge and with the possibility and with the imagination. We take that sense that we practice here within the bounds of First-Plymouth Church into the world. And for you who are listening to me today on this digital medium, you too can both receive that hospitality that we're giving you in this moment by coming to you, but also that you then carry that same imagination in your day-to-day dealings, in the workplace, in the marketplace, in the neighborhood, in the home, wherever you go. So, people of God, today Jesus wraps up a conversation with his disciples who are being sent into the world, into the risky world in need of good news. And he wraps it up by reminding them about welcoming and about community, about hospitality, about the radical nature of what it means to follow Jesus. So we too are sent, we too are called, we too are empowered by the Spirit. So go and be a radically hospitable community. The world needs it, we need it, and when we do that, we encounter Christ in unexpected places, among unexpected people. Thanks be to God. Amen.